Good morning and welcome to our social justice webinar series. This is this is webinar 2 of 6, and we are so glad that you decided to be with us today. My name is Charmaine Ward Milner, and I'm the Director of Corporate Relations and the Chair for the Social Justice Committee Initiative. Before we get started, I'd like to do a safety briefing, which is how we start all of our meetings. So if you're not at your home, please look to your left and look to your right, look in front and in back, and make sure that you are aware of the exit signs and where you can leave in case there is an emergency. If you are at home, make sure you still look to your left and right, front and back, and especially look on the floor. Make sure that there's nothing obstructing you. There are no drawers that are pulled out. And also, if you happen to be cooking this morning, make sure you didn't leave anything on the stove. We know that that sometimes happens. So we want to make sure that everyone is safe. So again, thank you for being here. So I'd like to start off just giving you an overview of the Social Justice Initiative. And it really starts with moving to equity, or MTE, some of you may have heard of. So this started back in January of 2020 when Tom Fanning, our president and CEO for Southern Company, announced our commitment to advance racial equity. And in doing so, we launched the MTE, or Moving to Equity framework. And you see that on your screen now. This framework really is looking at how we make decisions in terms of business, what policies we have, what processes we have in these 5 critical areas around our company. And that's talent, culture, community, political engagement, and suppliers. So again, the Moving to Equity framework is really around how we make decisions and make sure that there is equity in each of these critical areas. Now, when we focus in the community commitment, underneath that, it says that we want to invest in disadvantaged and distressed communities, and that we will invest more than $200 million. And now that number is $225 million. So that's where the Social Justice Initiative comes into play under the community commitment of moving to equity. So now let's talk about the Social Justice Initiative. So these 4 areas, and it started out with 3 areas, are not by happenstance. So there was a cross-system team that got together for more than 6 months and that looked into what are the areas that have the most demand, where is the most disparity, and then where can Georgia Power really lend our expertise and lend our investments in order to make a difference. We talked with other corporations, with community leaders, we looked at statistics and benchmarking, and that's how we came to these 3 areas, which were the initial 3 pillars: education equity, criminal justice equity, and economic empowerment. Within the last month, we added the energy justice pillar. So these 4 pillars is what we think about when we're talking about social justice initiative. And we want to make sure that we are investing in these pillars. Underneath each pillar, you see that there are what we call tenants, and there are focus areas underneath those tenants. And so when you look at education equity, it is that pipeline of education, starting with early childhood all the way to college, HBCUs specifically, that we will be investing in. When you look at criminal justice equity, it starts with preventing anyone from even going to jail. And then when someone does get into trouble, do they go to jail or do they go to a pre-arrest program? And then if they do happen to go to jail and they are incarcerated, how do we help them get trained and re-enter into society so that they are thriving citizens? And then finally, working with our responders to make sure they're trained for all situations, and specifically how to de-escalate situations. When we look at economic empowerment, this is really 2 pieces. One is entrepreneurship, and that is making sure that entrepreneurs have access to capital, that they have the training that they need, that they are able to build the capacity that they need. And then also looking at community investment, and that we are investing in our communities so that we have thriving communities, and looking specifically around affordable housing and infrastructure. And then finally, around energy justice. We want to make sure that we are investing for those low income and income qualified individuals that spend a significant amount of their income on energy. How can we help with that? How can we help those individuals that need assistance with paying their energy bill? And also making sure that all communities have access to energy efficiency and weatherization programs. Also looking at having access for communities to electric transportation, whether it's cars or electric charging stations, or even electric buses for our school systems. And also ensuring that communities have access to renewable and that there's job training out there for all of these new green and sustainable jobs that are out there. And then finally, looking at environmental justice, ensuring that our disadvantaged communities that might be what we call fence line, where they are next to any of our assets, whether it's headquarters or a substation or one of our generation plants, or even what we call frontline communities, where they are in an area where they may have more exposure to really extreme weather. An example would be coastal communities, making sure that we are investing in initiatives and programs and organizations to really make sure that any of the benefits or even any of the impact from our business that it is equitable on all communities, right? And so when you look at these 4 pillars that we are investing in, it's really exciting work, because we know that if we are intentional and we are specific in investing in these areas, that we can change the trajectory in some of these communities. And so let's look at the last thing, which is our investment. And so our investment is $87 million over 5 years and $18 million each year. You can see how it's allocated against the 4 pillars. Now, for some of you math majors and my engineers out there, know that $18 million doesn't add up, and that's because we just added the energy justice pillar, and we will start investing in that in 2022. We know that it's not just dollars, though. It's also engaging our employees, all of you that are listening. And so we're also committing to 250 employee mentors. And so we're hoping that we're going to exceed that number. Southern Company committed to 5,000 employee mentors, and our part of that is 250. And so when you look at the moving to equity, which is the big picture and how we're looking at our entire company, we move into the community commitment, which is the social justice initiative and the 4 pillars that I just shared with you. And this commitment is really exciting, what we can do to make a difference in the communities that we have across the state. One of the things that people ask is, so how does DE&I tie into this? And so it is absolutely tied in. A simplistic way to think about it is the DE&I is the internal focus. It's how we're talking about it internally, how we can be inclusive, the conversations, the actions, the processes that we're having, so that we can make sure that internally that we are, exemplifying the very thing that we want to invest in externally. But at the end of the day, all of this is important to our business. And that's the main thing that we want you to take away, because when we invest in those pillars, we're really investing in workforce development, and we're investing in having a strong economy. And when we have a big workforce development or a stronger workforce development, that provides talent that we can hire and other corporations can hire. And we do that, that makes our economy stronger, that makes Georgia stronger. And when Georgia is stronger, Georgia power is stronger. I want to just turn it over to Chris Womack, our CEO and president. He did a video which really explains our commitment even better than me. Let's show the video.
At Georgia Power, we believe it's our responsibility to be an active champion of the communities we serve. That's why we're excited to stand with our communities to tackle systemic equity issues across our state. We're committing $75 million to address these issues over the next 5 years, focusing on supporting and partnering with organizations that assist with education equity, criminal justice, and economic empowerment. And we're building a team of more than 250 employees who will serve as mentors to our state's young people, helping shape Georgia's future leaders. This financial investment and our commitment to mentoring, while just a part of our overall equity efforts, are one way we can make a real impact in distressed and disadvantaged communities and continue to be a champion for all Georgians.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that great insight. And next, I would like to introduce our awesome moderator for our economic empowerment webinar today, and that is Vicki Irwin Avery. She is the General Manager of Supplier Sustainability and Equity. Vicki, it's yours.
So thank you, Charmaine. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this conversation today around the topic of economic empowerment. We thank our corporate relations team for creating this platform to have this very important dialogue. Today, our goals include creating a heightened sense of awareness of problems facing some of our communities that place barriers to full participation in the U.S. economy. We also want to learn from community leaders that promote successful strategies to increase economic inclusion across all of our communities. And thirdly, let's explore opportunities for Georgia Power and other corporations and our teammates to be the change, to actively support company goals that will create sustainable communities across our footprint. So, when we talk about economic empowerment, we talk about increasing the economic rights and opportunities of all groups to have access to income and access to business ownership, workforce development and job training, and of course, home ownership. Economic empowerment is the capacity of all people to participate in, contribute to, and benefit from the growth processes in ways that recognizes the value of their contributions, respects their dignity, and makes it possible to have a fairer distribution of the benefits of growth. These benefits include increased financial literacy, which actually supports generational wealth through savings and investing, to look at access to capital and make sure resources are available for business ownership. Equity and access to opportunities leads to equitable investment in our communities through infrastructure and community revitalization, affordable housing, access to great paying jobs. Policy is also important as rules and regulations and laws are developed to support workplace equity and fair lending practices. All of this sounds reasonable, right? Well, however, we must address disparities and gaps in equitable access that may pose challenges for some of our communities, for some of our states, regions, and our country. These barriers impair the economic growth of our national economy. You know, McKinsey and Company, a global management consulting firm, released a study in June of this year, and it's the economic state of Black America, what is and what could be. So, in their study, McKinsey found that closing racial gaps across the economy is not only about righting historic wrongs, it is also about choosing a more dynamic future and realizing the full potential of a massively underutilized source of talent that benefits all America. So, what are the gaps that are referenced in the study, and what does it mean to economic empowerment? Well, McKinsey states that dismantling the barriers that have kept Black Americans and minorities from fully participating in the U.S. economy could unleash a tremendous wave of growth and productivity. Workers, we have racial gaps across the U.S. labor market, $220 billion annual wage disparity. In our business ownership, Black owned businesses are few in number and small in size due to the lower rates of entrepreneurship and lack of access to capital. McKinsey also says that there is a racial wealth gap that is the result of intergenerational issues and systemic racism, lower incomes, and lack of financial inclusion. So, how does this topic connect to our business? At Georgia Power, we seek to support the development and the growth of all communities through equity and inclusive participation. A pillar in our Moving to Equity framework focuses on economic inclusion and workforce development by growing small and diverse businesses. Diverse businesses include businesses owned and managed by minorities, women, and veterans. So now let's move to our panel of leaders who will help us understand why supplier diversity and small business inclusion are important to the growth of our local and national economies, and how economic empowerment helps to sustain small and diverse businesses to generate economic output, jobs creation, and local revenues and taxes. So, if our audience will use your virtual imagination, let's jump into our fully charged electric vehicle and navigate from the Georgia Power headquarter building here in Atlanta all the way to Athens, Georgia. Hey, no distance or miles anxiety, all right? Because Georgia Power has us covered with charging stations along the way as we navigate to the University of Georgia, to the campus where the Small Business Development Center is located. Alan Adams is the statewide director of the Georgia Small Business Development Center. Alan, please introduce us to the SBDC as you jump into our electric vehicle.
Thank you, Vicki. Yes, the Small Business Development Center is an educational extension program of the university. We provide management, consulting, and training to small business owners and prospective entrepreneurs. We have a network of 18 office locations across the state, so we're easily accessible to people. And our hope and desire is to help people grow a business if they already have one, or start one successfully by understanding everything they need to do. One of the stories I like to tell about us, it's not entirely descriptive, but a business that you most of you will recognize the name of, Savannah Bee Company. The owner of that business, Ted Dennard, likes to tell the story of he had started his business. It was very small. He was getting started out. He came by to see our local Savannah office. He wanted to get some advice and opinions. And he said after being in there about an hour and a half, he left literally in tears because he thought he was doing so well and getting into the financials of his business, understand what was going on. And he came to realize he wasn't doing as good as he thought. And it's a pretty funny story because Ted now has become a national brand. His business is very successful, but it's not our job to make people cry. What we try to help people do is understand what are the fundamental things they need to know to make good decisions about their business going forward. And I think that's what all of us in this group do. But Ted, of course, has been very successful thanks to his hard work and insight, but he continued to come back for a while, and he said he cried a few more times after that. But anyhow, he was really glad for it, and he's a great spokesman for us. Thank you.
So thank you, Alan. And as you can see, the Small Business Development Center network is very critical and important as we develop and grow our businesses here in Georgia. So Alan, jump on in my EV and let's head back towards Atlanta to Castleberry Hills, the area where we're going to meet Jay Bailey, CEO of the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Hi, Jay.
Welcome back to Atlanta, everybody. Hey, everybody, I'm Jay. I think the only difference between Bankhead and Buckhead is access, opportunity, and exposure. That's it. And we want to live at the nexus of that. So in honor of one of the greatest entrepreneurs this city has ever produced, Herman Russell, we are taking his old headquarter building and creating the largest center in America dedicated to growing, scaling, and developing Black businesses. We talk a lot about DEI, but I think one of the more empowering and powerful concepts is belonging. How do we create this safe space for Black entrepreneurs to fail and fly, to stretch, to build relationships, And we've only been doing this for now 3 years, but we got a ton of success stories, about 127 entrepreneurs we support full time, about 4,000 that we support in our network. And just like you said, Alan, even in this short time, we've seen success stories where a company like Symphony Chips comes to us doing 20 cases per month out of the back of their trunk, to now you can find them in Walmart, Target, TJ Maxx stores all over the country. It's a game changer for you Georgia Power people out there. It's pretty simple math. If he was doing 20 cases out of the back of his trunk per month, he wasn't that good of a customer to you. But now that he has a 70,000 square foot warehouse that runs a lot of energy through that building, he's a much better company, because he's a much better customer because it's a much better company. And we're in the business of building businesses. We're in the readiness business and the access business. Our job is to get companies to a point of readiness to do business at the next level, and making sure that they have the access to fly when they are.
So, Jay, you brought out a very great point in that it is important for advocacy organizations and centers to support these small and diverse businesses, because they become great supporters in our community, and also they become even customers for us from a residential and from a perspective of being a business customer. So for our listeners out there, small and diverse businesses are very important to us. So come on in the car, Jay, and we're going to jump in our EV and we're going to keep going. Remember, we don't have no anxiety about mileage here, because Georgia Power got us covered, okay? And we're going to take a ride, and we're going to visit the offices of ACE, Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, where we will meet the one, the only Grace Briggs, the CEO of ACE. Good to see you, Grace. Please give our audience a brief overview of ACE.
Sure. I'm happy to be here, Vicki. You actually have traveled to Cleveland, Georgia, which is in the foothills of the Southern Appalachian Mountains, which is where I'm located right now. Now, ACE is large enough to have 5 offices, and one of our offices is in the Russell Center that Jay Bailey was just speaking of. ACE is a private nonprofit. We're a mission lender is what we are. So we lend money and provide capital to businesses because it's our mission. We do not have stockholders. So anything that is excess goes right back into opening more offices and providing more opportunities for people. I actually am the founder of ACE, and I founded it in the back of my house, just like you hear most entrepreneurs say, with a $50,000 grant, helping 4 rural counties with women business owners. Now we've lent over $100 million, helped 1,400 businesses. 52% of all of our customers and clients are African American owned businesses. 50% are women owned businesses, and 18% Hispanic owned businesses. So we have really grown, and we're happy to be here because, as everyone said, talent is equally dispersed. Economic opportunity is not. And I believe that Georgia Power is leading the way to help show our state and other corporations how they too can get on board the electric car and take the trip, and let's grow Georgia businesses.
Yes, thank you, Grace. And that is such an amazing story to talk about starting this great organization with just a $50,000 grant. You know, it takes a lot when entrepreneurs and people like Grace and our team that are represented here today, they start off with a vision and a dream. And it's all about getting those opportunities and seeing it through. And I must add that one of my teammates here at Southern Company, Matt Baselli, is the chair of the board of ACE. And
Yes.
Matt and I work very closely over the years with ACE. So if you're out there, Matt, hey. So let's keep moving along. We're going to leave the foothills of Georgia, as Grace described it, and go to our last stop on this trip. And we're going to come to Midtown Atlanta, where we will meet Stacy Key, CEO of of the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council, also known as GMSDC. So welcome Stacy on into the vehicle. Take the driver's seat, Stacy, and give our audience a high-level view of the GMSDC.
Vicki, thank you, and welcome to Midtown Atlanta. Electric vehicles are clearly the way of the future, and we will see more of that, and minorities intimately involved in a lot of the technologies that's driving that new innovation. And so, as Vicki mentioned, I have the distinct honor and pleasure of leading a 46-year-old organization called the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council, GMSDC. Thank you to Southern Company, Georgia Power, for one of our founders. So 46 years ago, a group of companies had the vision and the foresight to want to open up their supply chain to include more ethnic minorities. And so Delta Airlines, WestRock, Cox, AT&T, to name a few, were involved in that. And we were housed with the Metro Atlanta Chamber. They housed us with the Metro Atlanta Chamber, which really the capital of a lot of the business CEOs in Atlanta, to make sure we had the proper nurturing and growth. And here we are 46 years later. Our mission is to connect ethnic minority business to corporate and governmental supply chains to do business. That's all we do every single day. We've got 4 pillars in which we execute that under. We certify, we do a certification that says you own, manage, and control your business as an ethnic minority. We develop. We took over the state of Georgia's mentoring program about 10 years ago. We've got the oldest standing mentoring program in the country, mentoring small businesses for growth. The data and the studies show that companies that are mentored, they survive, they thrive, and they flourish. As you can imagine, companies come in all flavors and sizes. So we partner. We partner with ACE, we partner with SBDC, we partner with RICE, all organizations to help minority businesses grow. And there are many throughout the state because GMSDC is a statewide organization. While headquartered in Midtown, we cover the great state of Georgia. Connections, we help connect. As you can imagine, it's difficult for a minority business to get into a supply chain. GMSDC paves that path, providing them access to the supply chain. We introduce them to corporations. We share information on how to do business. It's all about connections. In 2020, over $7 billion by GMSDC certified minorities in our great state. So what we do and all of our organizations do has impact. And then advocate. We advocate on behalf of minority business. As you can imagine, policies and practices make the difference in how our businesses will thrive and survive. And so GMSDC, again, working in partnership with other organizations to make sure that our policies are friendly to minority and to small businesses so that they have a playing field to thrive in our great economy. And so I've had the distinct pleasure of being on board with GMSDC for the last 13 years. I wake up excited every single day on the impact on the work that we do, the jobs that we create, and the impact we have on communities of color. So Vicki, thank you, and I applaud Georgia Power Southern Company for your commitment, what you're doing. It is great to be on this journey with all of you. I'm buckling up. I'm ready for the ride.
Okay, so now that we have had an overview from each of our great community leaders, let's explore how these organizations support economic empowerment in our communities. Now, audience, we need your engagement. I believe you can put questions in the chat, and we're going to go up in between some of our guest panelists and entertain some of your questions as well. So send us some energy, send us some love, let us know you're out there. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So, Jay, there's data from the U.S. Census Bureau. And the data has been reported there is a need for aggressive supplier diversity programs to respond to changing demographics and to create businesses in minority communities. There's a quote on your center's website from the great H.J. Russell. And that quote says, "Entrepreneurship helped my dreams come true. I want the same for other young people looking to make good lives for themselves. I'm a lifetime believer that for America, to continue being great and provide enough jobs for its people, the only path is fostering a national entrepreneurial spirit. And that's a quote from Mr. Herman J. Russell Sr. So, what are some of the programs that the center supports to foster the growth of entrepreneurs? And if you can, share with us how you measure some of your success.
I love that quote. I love that man. I mean, I was a 14-year-old kid that used to steal my mother's car to drive around Southwest Atlanta because I didn't believe Black people could live in houses that looked like that. I came upon Mr. Russell's house with a tennis court in the back and a pool inside his house that he had at the age of 33. Um, Look, I think that America loses GDP every year because the brilliant ideas that exist in Black and brown and rural minds all over this country never reach the marketplace because they don't believe they belong. I love what you said, Grace, about mentorship, or Stacy, what you said about mentorship. Literally, if we want to talk about innovation, show me someone more innovative on the planet than a single mother with 2 kids making 17,000 a year. Or if you want to talk entrepreneurship and hustle, go to any drug dealer on the West Side. They understand import, export, wholesale, retail, supply, demand, territory. See, there is brilliance that exists in these minds. We've just not channeled it, and we've just not created the on-ramp. I think oftentimes programming only focuses on being informative. Our goal should all be to be transformative. How are these people different at the end of their engagement with our organizations or corporations? So it's our goal to create a platform, and our model is called Big Ideas: inspire, develop, execute, accelerate, scale. To be able to meet a company where they are and chart a course to where they want to go. Just like in HBCU, if I come in as a senior, I'm not taking freshman courses. And a lot of times what we see with Black entrepreneurs is they go from program to program trying to gain traction, and all they're really doing is taking English 101 7 times in a row. We got to be able to measure that progression. And as you talked about, how do we measure success? It's literally from where a company has started, and within 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, we're able to measure how far they've come. And we're developing tools and software and metrics and indexes to be very scientific about it. You know, this is a dire time because in Atlanta, although we have so many pluses, and I'm from Atlanta, and nobody's going to see anybody that loves our city more, but we've also got a flip of the coin where we're the worst city in the country when it comes to income inequality and economic immobility. And as Mr. Russell said in that quote, the real way that we're going to create enough jobs for our communities, our people, the way that we're going to spur community development in a real and sustainable way is born out of the Grace Fricks of the world who took a small amount and made it 100 million. It comes from Alan when that guy comes in tears but understands his financial model enough to scale, or Stacy when that company is brilliant and has the capacity and everything that they need, and all they need is an introduction and some advocacy, and they fly. I think that coordinated and together we make this thing work, and I think the hub that we're creating gives people the courage, the self-esteem, and the belief that they can do it. And then when we connect with partners like everyone on the panel, I just don't think Atlanta, we have the community, we have the culture, we have the corporations, we've got the colleges. We miss nothing in this city. And shame on us if we don't all come together and create something that history will never forget. And I think that Atlanta, for everything that we've endured to be the city that we are, we don't have the right to fail. We've got all the tools.
Great. And Jay, I agree with you. You know, when we think about Atlanta, we think about that mythical creature, the phoenix, rising from the ashes. And so we have everything we need here, and all of the organizations coming together. I'll share another data point with you. Citigroup did a study last year in response to what was going on with the pandemic and how it was impacting minority businesses. And what they found was that over the past 20 years, the United States has lost 16 trillion with a T, $16 trillion in gross domestic product because of systemic racism. Now that's mind-boggling. For those that think this is a social movement, it's more than that. We're talking about economic empowerment. But Citigroup also said that if we begin to close some of these gaps and barriers that we spoke of earlier, education, health, housing, access to jobs, job training, that the United States could increase the gross domestic product by 5 trillion in the next 5 years. So what a great group of panelists we have here today to help us at Georgia Power to understand how we begin to close those gaps and make sure that every community has equitable access, like you said, Jay. The only difference is access to opportunity. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing at the Russell Center. And we're going to come back and talk a little more as well. So Alan, let's move and talk about small businesses right now. Many people may not know, but nearly 99.9% of all United States businesses are small businesses. They employ more than 60 million people, which translates into 47%. Hear me, 47% of the total United States workforce. So as you can see, small businesses fuel our economy and it fuels job creation across our country. We also know that entrepreneurs can be fiercely independent, and that's part of that entrepreneurial spirit. So, what are the benefits of seeking advice from others? If you're an entrepreneur, like Jay said, you're coming in and you're looking for opportunities and building relationships. And as they're seeking advice, what resources does the SBDC provide to small businesses to help them grow and be sustainable? And please feel free to share any success stories or accomplishments.
Sure. No matter whether people have been in business for 20 years or just 2 weeks, and nobody knows everything. There's always changing market conditions, new things come up and consumer desires or wants, behaviors, those kinds of things. So for us, yes, we can help people with their unique business circumstances. How do business principles, practices apply to their unique needs? Everybody has their strength in a business. They have a passion for their product or their service. They may be very comfortable marketing, customer service, that kind of thing, but they're not so comfortable with the financials or vice versa, that kind of thing. So for us, it's listening carefully. What does the business owner think they need and want? They may not recognize some other challenges or things they need to deal with first. And understanding their capacity to take in information, process. Our goal is to get people, as Jay was saying a few minutes ago, we use the term transformative consulting with our folks. Get people understanding, thinking, evaluating, processing information in a different way than the day they showed up. Basically, work ourselves out of a relationship. They don't need us anymore. We can go on to the next person. That's our approach. It's very much individualized because every individual circumstance is different. Their knowledge level, that kind of thing. I was another client who's talked publicly for us before. She was a single mom. She had a little business. It was going down the drain. She had to close her storefront, moving out of her home, and she was looking at losing her home. And it just wasn't going well. She came looking for what do I need to do right now, stabilize myself, move forward. Several years later, she was on the Inc. list of fastest 500 growing companies in America. And she talks about this. She'd have been on the street if she'd not had that kind of personalized help. And it's a great story. It's a testament to her. And her work ethic and dedication. And that's, that's not everybody's story. You're talking about how many businesses there are in America. A lot of them are very small and they want to stay very small. They want to manage them. For those that want to grow, that want to do something more, there's a variety of resources that don't cost or very low cost that can be helpful in those early years when you're making these critical decisions where simple mistakes can prove fatal to the enterprise. So that's kind of where we are.
And so, Alan, we at Georgia Power, we have been supporters of the Small Business Development Center and programs like Grow Smart for over 30 years. Can you share with our audience, do the entrepreneurs have any fees associated with coming to the SBDC centers? How are you funded? Can you share a little bit more about that, and maybe a little few points about the Growth Smart program?
Sure. As far as accessing our services, we term it no direct cost for getting this individualized help from us. You as a taxpayer are paying for it. So um, training programs we do, there are fees associated with those, but Congress, we are partially federally funded. When Congress developed this program, they knew small business owners operate in a cash tight environment. They did not want them to have to make that difficult decision to, am I going to pay for help or not? Here's a no cost, direct cost resource. That's the idea behind it. And as I also say, it's good for us too, because if we were having to run collections on 4,000 small businesses a year, it'd be a PR nightmare for the University of Georgia. So we don't have to deal with that. As far as Grow Smart, yes, we got interested and introduced to supplier development and supplier diversity through our association with Stacy's group. And one of the things they introduced to early was Georgia Power, and they were looking at doing some things to help companies who were already suppliers or wanted to be suppliers improve their business operations, mature their organizations so they're more reliable and dependable. For larger companies who are interested in supplier diversity, it's not just a social good they're after. There's an economic need and necessity to have a diverse supplier base, and they want to help those firms be reliable, dependable suppliers. And so that's how we got involved with Grow Smart and with Georgia Power's Supplier Diversity Group. And again, that has gone on for a very long time. There have been some other programs and activities we've done with Georgia Power in that realm and with Southern Company now. And it's just been a great opportunity for us to meet business owners who are committed to growth and very deliberate about what they're trying to do. And it just makes for a great match.
So yes, I mean, our relationship, Georgia Power's relationship and Southern Company's relationship with the SBDC has proved very valuable to us. And you said something else, Alan, that I want to tie back for our audience. When we talked about policy making being important to economic empowerment, Alan talked about this program being federally funded and then some being supported by the tax base. So we want to tie back why policy and federal and budgeting are so important to ensuring that our communities get equitable access. And I will share with you that I do love that little golden Georgia Bulldog we have in our trophy case out there for all the years of support. So go dogs, okay?
Great, thank you.
And so right now, we're going to keep moving along. If you do have any questions for our panelists, or even if you have a thought or an idea, please share it in the chat so that we can see it, because we do want to hear your ideas as well. The connection point here is, how do we use this information we're going to take away today, and how do we use it to be part of the change in making sure that we're meeting our moving to equity goals? So I'm going to move now along to Grace. So Grace, small and diverse businesses face a lot of challenges in developing and growing their businesses. And during the pandemic, it brought out, it's kind of like it exploded and brought to the surface many of the challenges became front and center. It's like we pulled the onion back, and here were these challenges, and we knew they were there, but the pandemic exacerbated them. And minority-owned firms, they faced major financial challenges during the pandemic. A few of them are, we looked at data, and cash reserves of Black-owned small businesses were down 26% compared to the previous year. Asian-owned firms' cash reserves bottomed out early in April and were down 20%. And overall, the median small business experienced a 5% year-over-year decline in cash reserves, with white-owned firms experienced a decline closer to 3%. So entrepreneurs have identified for us that access to capital is the number one need they have. So, how does a small or a diverse business work with ACE, and how do they look to qualify for a loan to replenish their cash needs?
Thank you for asking that question. As we all know, is the fuel for any small business. You have to have cash and you have to have cash flow. And it's been a very difficult time for all small businesses. When you think about getting capital from a bank, those are traditional lenders. And ACE was created to be an alternative to a traditional lender. We do for people what others can't or won't. So when you're applying for a loan from ACE, and in all honesty, there are a few other lenders like us across the state. So it's not that we're the only one, but there are about 6 of us. We are looking at different kinds of criteria than traditional lenders are. The most significant thing is that the business itself is a viable business that cash flows or has enough cash in the business to make it worthwhile. It's throwing off an income for the business owner. And when any lender goes to make a loan, they know that, well, we all think that people are going to do well, but what happens if there's a pandemic or anything else that keeps someone from being able to repay the lender? So when we're looking at making a loan, we say, okay, if it doesn't go well, we need to have collateral or some security as an alternative form of repayment. That's the first distinguishing feature between an ACE and a traditional lender, is that ACE is looking at a bigger picture here. So we will make loans. The loans going up to 100,000 now because of the pandemic will not have to have hard collateral. Now the business has to be good. The person has to have the credit worthiness, pay their bills, but we're not requiring that same type of collateral. Now, the reason this is important to underserved business owners is because of what was mentioned earlier, legacy wealth. When you look at anyone, we all rise on the shoulders of other people, and in particular, our families. So if your family didn't have, I'm not talking about major wealth, but if they didn't own a home or own a business or have retirement income for generations, then you don't have that wealth, that stability factor built in. So we are a way of closing that wealth gap. And at the same time, it creates the business for the future. I wanted to just tell you very quickly about Tennille Carter. Tennille is from New Orleans originally, and she lost everything during Katrina. And so she ended up moving her family up to the Atlanta area and started her bookkeeping business again. And we helped her with a very small loan, like $35,000. And then she kept growing and kept working at it, rebuilt, and became part of our high performing group, which is a group of women business owners that all have to have as the bottom threshold 500,000 in gross revenues or more. So they're women that are moving up. And Tennille has done so well. And when talking about role models, her daughter, Jasmine, created a little business. And I've got two of her products here. They're called Candles by Jazzy. Now, the important thing, oh, and yes, by the way, this one's called Stress Relief. This one's Lavender. Catch the theme here? But the important thing about this is that Jasmine was seeing her mother. Her mother was a role model. The entrepreneurship and understanding what it really takes to run a business is being ingrained in Jasmine, who's only 14. And so you're beginning to build that wealth again, build that in the family. And that's for a Main Street. I mean, there are many entrepreneurs who are famous, but here's one, as most of the 1,400 we've worked with are just regular Main Street, everyday people.
And Grace, that's really a good story to talk about why it's important that we support our marginalized communities, those that are underrepresented, to talk about entrepreneurship and business ownership. We talked about how it helps to build that generational wealth. Yes. How it started with the parent, now she's moved it on to the daughter. Now they're beginning to build that generational wealth that we need to see. And you also made another point about we can give and get access to loans for small businesses, but it's important for corporations like ours to help support through revenue generation by giving these small businesses the work, by purchasing their products, by using their services, not only from the corporations, but from my teammates. There are small businesses in our communities that we should look to support because they help to vitalize our communities. Stacy, I'm going to come to you next, but before I come to you, I'm going to ask Rosa, do we have a question from the audience that we can share?
Hi, Vicki. Yes, we do. We have one question, and it's really for anyone on the panel. How do they take this valuable information to middle and high schoolers to let them know there are other options for careers?
You know what, Vicki? I want to just jump in.
Yes.
I am a product of junior achievement. Junior achievement, my parents were both junior achievement leaders, and actually they drugged me and forced me. So let's be completely transparent. But out of that experience, I grew a passion for entrepreneurship. And so I know there's an established program with junior achievement. Some of our minority businesses have spoken to the students at junior achievement and been a part of their program, helping, encouraging them and showing them that people, Black and brown people, also have lots of businesses and small businesses throughout the country. So one avenue is junior achievement because that's what they do every single day, all day. We're doing an HBCU initiative right now, which is not necessarily junior high school students, but for college students, making sure they get the rich experience of working with entrepreneurs at a college level. So they get that exposure. They understand what it's like running a business and all the ins and outs of that. So just a couple of tidbits.
I think one of our great goals is, what if we put the same amount of effort in finding the next H.J. Russell as we did the next LeBron James? And, if somebody can kick a ball, catch a ball, throw a ball, I don't care what little small town or what crevice of the world they're in, they'll find that talent, develop that talent, grow that talent. You become what you behold. And I think exposure is key. And for any entrepreneurs making a distinct effort to get out into communities, one of the things that we'll do with the entrepreneurs we support at the Russell Center is that there's going to be a component of community give back where they got to be flooded into the community so these kids can see their reflection. Grace, I love your story, but even Mr. Russell, he became a plasterer, not because of some mythical, magical dust that was, spread on him. His daddy was a plasterer. He saw it every day and said, you know what, I could do that. I could be that, and I could do it successfully. So no, it has to trickle down. And if all of us are successful, this will happen at every stage. And those elementary school students will be inspired by those high school students. And those high school students will aspire to be those college and adult entrepreneurs. I just think it's an opportunity gap that we have to close, but I think it's also the exposure gap that we have to close.
Yes, and as you speak about that exposure, here at Georgia Power and Southern Company, our supply chain team, through our supplier sustainability and equity, we are looking at supporting a program called GNT, which will be piloting it in a middle school, in a Title I middle school in Atlanta, where we're going to be exposing sixth and seventh graders to the trades, not only as a career path, but also talking to them about how it could create an entrepreneur path to create and build their own businesses. So, Rosa, thank you, and to the audience for that question, because that is key and critical as we close these disparities and gaps. So that was great. So moving along, Stacy, you know, we had Georgia Minority Business Opportunity Week in September, and we were supported by the governor's office, all of the chambers, major corporations across the state. And we released a state of minority business study. And for our audience, some very interesting data came from that study that we are now using at GMSDC and with our major corporations like Georgia Power and Southern Company to impact some change. So what some of the information said, MBEs are a vital part of the US economy. They generated, listen to this, more than 400 billion economic output. They created 2.2 million jobs, and they contributed 49 billion in revenue to local, state, and federal taxing authorities in 2019. We also found out that MBE growth has an economic ripple effect that can be a game changer for corporations, for minority communities, and the overall US economy. We know that corporations benefit from minority supplier development programs by expanding markets, increasing innovation, reducing costs, and increasing quality and competitive advantage. We learned all that from that study. Now, we got the data, we got the information. What are the three essential steps that minority business owners can take to grow and sustain their companies long term?
So Vicki, just a couple of things before we get to that. And so, as you mentioned, we got great data. And for the benefit of our audience, we did several things this year. We do a State of Minority Business, a national discussion. We do our study every 2 years. This year, our partner was PricewaterhouseCoopers, an incredible organization that was phenomenal to work with. So kudos to PricewaterhouseCoopers for their efforts and contributions to the State of Minority Business study. We also did a second study around the state of minority business, specifically in Georgia, so that we understand the dynamics and the landscape here in Georgia. And, Vicki, we got a lot of other statistics and information. And those of you that want the study, let me know. I'll be glad to share it with you. You can have your own, very own copy of that. But there's one thing that came out of the study that I want to really highlight. The State of Minority Business for Georgia highlighted, if we continue on our current path, our corporate path of spending what they spend with minority business, it will take us over 100 years to economic parity and economic mobility in Black and Brown communities. But if corporate America were to make a commitment to spend 1% more each year, 1%. So again, that says I meet you where you are. If you're at 2, go to 3. If you're at 4, go to 5. Georgia Power's commitment, I think I saw, was 20%. If you're at 18, go to 19. If we can simply do that, we can get there in 15 years. We go from 100 to 15. Let's just take a minute. It would be in, I think, all of our lifetime we could get there, as opposed to not. 100 years, unfortunately, I'm not going to be here. So we've got some work and some recommendations of how we continue on this journey to get to this racial equity, economic mobility. You can call it what you like, but the point is, let's take the journey and let's arrive at the destination, because it has impact. So again, the study, Pricewaterhouse, great. We work with Supplier IO, a minority business, on the State of Minority Business for Georgia, our economic impact as well, but all great information. But all of that data and information means nothing if we don't do something with it, because that's really where the rubber meets the road. So that's where we're going. And so all three of you on this panel, just know you're going to get a call. and we're going to talk about how we come together as a ecosystem, as a community, and work together. Because Jay said it, together we're invincible.
Yes.
We can get there together. And so, Vicki, as we talk about what minority businesses can do, whether you are a supply chain business, you're an enterprise, whether you're a community business, you're a solo entrepreneur, or just a small business, we're saying the same things. And Alan kind of summed it up really, really nicely in focusing on these fundamentals, because the landscape has changed. And what we're telling our businesses today is, you need to take a look at your business to see if it's relevant. Your product or service may no longer be needed based on where we are. We've had instances where companies have had to pivot, swirl, and even close based on where we are. And so looking at those fundamentals in your business to understand, and you don't have to do this alone. This is not entrepreneurship is a team sport. You do not go this path alone. You've got great organizations that can help you in looking at that assessment of the business, but you've got to take a hard look. You've got to talk to your customer. Is your customer still doing business? We're hearing the stories every single day of the supply chain challenges and what's going on. You've got to understand, is your product relevant? Do you have the resources to maintain, resources being intellectual capital? Everybody's having labor shortages, having the right resources to the table. Do I have the cash flow to do this on every single day? Do I have the technology, the processes, the procedures to continue based on where we are? The next normal is requiring different things. It is not, you're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. And so you've got to look at this business with a new lens. Have you established a board of directors, a virtual board? We're helping companies set up these virtual boards, bring fresh eyes for a new way of thinking looking at their business, because the world has changed. And so we're focusing on those fundamentals. We're focusing on how they're doing business. We're focusing on making sure you're connected to your customer, making sure you understand you have the cybersecurity has changed. We're going to be doing a pilot in 2022 on a cybersecurity pilot, because without it, you can't do business with the government or corporations if you don't have the cybersecurity infrastructure. And so all of those fundamentals that Alan laid out, we're focusing on, and that's what we're working with our business owners to pivot, swirl, and or stay the course if that's required. They're positioned so that they can sustain. That's really our focus. It's not new, it's not sexy, but it gets the job done, and it lays the solid foundation for growth, because without it, you can't succeed. And so Grace and what Adam does and what Jay does, all of that, founders, a lot of the founders and the innovation solutions that are coming through the Rice Center, are those solutions still viable in where we are? If not, how do we tweak or, just a bit if necessary to make sure that innovation can get to a supply chain? Because supply chains are risk adverse. Do they need to look at partnerships? Partnerships become critical now. All of those things are on the table. Again, we're doing these virtual assessments of businesses to help them bring a new lens to the business to make sure they can continue to survive and thrive.
And Stacy, you're right. Relevancy, especially now, is so important. We learned that during the pandemic that many of the minority-owned businesses and small businesses had more of a challenge because they were in industries that were more greatly impacted.
Absolutely.
The impact came because of the social distancing requirements and that type of safety protocol. So we have to make sure that we're shifting our minority-owned businesses, our woman-owned, our veteran-owned businesses, and helping them understand the trends. We tried to work with that in our development programs here at Georgia Power in helping our small and diverse businesses understand where the energy industry is going.
Right. That's a key industry. That's a growth industry. Smart cities. Are you positioned and can you participate in some of the innovative industries that are positioned for high growth going forward? Can your product pivot to that industry? Looking at all of those things. And you're right, they were disproportionately impacted because of the industries that they're in. But how do we position for the future so that they're in the strategic industries with the products and services that they bring to the table?
Yeah, and then you make a very good point there. Strategic industries, where are we going? The shift from coal to more renewable resources.
Right.
Um, Moving from to electric vehicles, autonomously driven vehicles.
That's right.
We got to make sure that our diverse community understands where these trends are going and that we bring them into our communities. We've got to make sure we have EV infrastructure in our communities,
That's
in
right.
our minority communities, and get that exposure. So all of that is so very relevant as we look, all of us as a team working together, look to grow and develop businesses. Rosa, is there another question in the audience at this time?
Vicki, we don't have any questions at this time, but I did want to share a couple of comments.
Okay, good.
Jamal shared that Georgia Power is currently hosting a junior achievement competition at Banneker High School. So just wanted to share that. And then we did have a comment also that they love that no right to fail in quotation marks, and that some inspiration is definitely needed.
Great. Thank you, Rosa. And thank you, audience. Please continue to share your comments, or if you have a question, we definitely would love to hear those comments as well. So I have a final impact question that I'm going to ask each of our panelists to contribute to. You know, we've had great discussions thus far and some great information on how we're going to continue to look at economic empowerment and entrepreneurship, because we know it is the economic engine for our country and for our nation, for our communities, and to close some of these disparities and gaps that we've been talking about. So we know that we have these issues, we have the concerns, we know what the data is around them. What is your message to corporate America, private individuals, as we seek to put America and her small businesses back to work? How can corporations, advocacy organizations, governmental agencies, our team members here at Georgia Power, how can we be the change to support small and diverse businesses? So, Alan, would you like to share any feedback or comments on that?
Sure. I think for individuals themselves, owning your business empowers you in a certain way. If you're not really interested in getting into a corporate culture somehow and trying to maneuver in that world, and you have a passion and desire to do and control, then entrepreneurship can be a great outlet. Now, it's work and it takes effort and it's risk. And so I think there are expensive ways to get into that. There are not so expensive ways to get in that. And organizations like those represented here today can be a great resource to people who maybe they didn't grow up in a family-owned business like Mr. Russell, and they don't know how to proceed. There's all kinds of things that can help you learn, problem solve, introduce you to new opportunities, new people. So there's a lot of resources available if you're willing to reach out to them and apply what they're trying to help you understand. For larger companies, again, I think it's not just a social desire, which we're seeing another a surge of that in this country, which is a great thing, but it's an economic interest as well. This idea of having a diverse supplier base. I mean, we're seeing problems all across the country right now because supply chains are hampered or broken down. And if every big company knows, if your eggs are all in one basket and something happens to that egg producer, you're in trouble. So there's kind of a mixture there, and I think for corporate America, over my lifetime, it just seems people have fallen into such a dependency on government's going to solve all our problems. Government can do a lot and has a lot of powerful good, but it's not that powerful. Corporate America's sanctioning, endorsing, supporting those kinds of gestures have a message. I can tell you for the SBDC program at University of Georgia, I know Jay will agree with me. University of Georgia is a good brand name in Georgia, particularly while the football team's doing well. That always helps. But when we're doing a program that has the Georgia Power logo on it or other private entities that are known in a community, that validates what we're trying to do in a way just touting it ourselves can't. So I think corporate entities, and Georgia Power certainly is known statewide for this already in the economic development world, certainly sanctioning, supporting things that validate things, which tells business people, hey, there's something here that I ought to listen to. And that's just been great for lifting our program up over a number of years. And I think corporate America can bring that to the equation the way public brands just can't.
Alan, I like you talked about risk to the supply chain, and that this is such an important conversation as we diversify the supply chain and not put all of our eggs in one basket, not have everything dependent on just large corporations or overseas manufacturing. So we do have a very vital role to play here. So Grace, I'm going to come to you next, the queen of capital.
I actually think the most important thing that companies like Georgia Power and Southern can do is look at the opportunities that you directly have within your business. And I mean, this is what Stacy Key's organization does, is helps create the suppliers. That is a major way. I always think of what we do with providing capital is we invest in one and impact many. So of course, we will supply the capital for the business, but we can't create the businesses, but you can. Georgia Power can. You are inside an organization that's got many, many, many opportunities for people. So if you open up and keep going with it, the other corporations will fall in line behind your example.
And that's a great comment, Grace. We have our supply chain team, and we also have our supplier sustainability and inclusive growth team that I want to shout out right now, the best team, the best supplier diversity team in the nation. So for our team members, if you are looking for qualified and certified and experienced suppliers, please reach out to us, because as Grace said, it's important that we find opportunities inside of our own organization. So our supplier sustainability and inclusive growth team is waiting to help. So thank you for that comment, Grace. Jay,
Vicki?
let's move to you.
You know, as individuals, just two words come to mind: intentionality and authenticity. One of our great entrepreneurs in Atlanta, part of our faculty and founder of the Village Market, Dr. Key Holloman, says support is a verb. What are you going to do? And I think each of us individually controls our own household balance sheet. So the intentionality when I go spend my money in places, if I'm serious about changing the dynamic, I'll be serious about where I spend my money. You made a point earlier, Vicki, I agree that if big corporations talked about the future of their industries, if you showed us where the hockey puck was going, we could train the next Wayne Gretzky to score. We could start to build the companies that can solve your big problems. And we know, everybody on this call knows, that a big corporate contract can be a game changer if you have your first customer for an organization. You guys spend billions of dollars every year. And $120 million company for a company that was founded to solve a big problem that you have now creates hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs. And what would be the catalytic impact of 5 to 10 companies in Atlanta, Georgia, having the capacity to do north of 50 to 150 million in revenue, hire 200 to 1,000 individuals? That impacts housing, education, wealth gap, household wealth. It is the whole game. And so because small businesses are truly the undercurrent and the driving force of our economy, let us not see it as charity. Let us not see it as philanthropy. When we talk about supplier diversity and minority businesses, we kind of pat it on the head sometimes. But as your data supported, This is trillion-dollar impact that we're talking about. This is not a coat drive. And I think that many times we put supplier diversity and minority empowerment or Black empowerment in the wrong bucket. We better start looking at it through a business lens, and a very serious business lens, because it impacts all of us.
Yes, Jay, you're right. And I like that you brought in the comment, what that multiplier effect. You know, that multiplier effect. When we invest our dollars into small and diverse businesses, we know there is a multiplier effect. At Southern Company in our regulated utility industry footprint in 2019, our spend was small, woman-owned, minority, and veteran-owned businesses supported more than 30,000 jobs in our communities, more than 30,000. And so we have this economic impact study, and we will continue to do it, because at Georgia Power and Southern Company, we want to be able to show how we are having an impact in our communities. And there is that trickle down and that multiplier effect, that when you purchase and buy from small and diverse businesses, they hire people. We get the workforce we need. We get incomes into the families. People can buy homes. Hey, people can pay their utility bills. So, and we can build great schools and have education. So that is so very key and critical. And I'm going to go to my friend Stacy Key and let her take this electric vehicle and drive us home with her final comments.
You know what?
Because we're going to recharge after this, okay?
Vicki, let me tell you, Alan, Grace, and Jay said it so well. I mean, they said it perfectly. The number one thing that any corporate organization can do is opportunities. That's what puts food on the table. That's that creates jobs, creates generational wealth in communities of color. So opportunities. I challenge corporations to look at this from a different lens. You know, we often hear, as Jay said, in supplier diversity, a different perspective, and look at the lens from it's a wide open field. Imagine the possibilities and look for opportunities in places you haven't looked before. Ask all of your primes, and within you do business with lots of primes. Ask them to mirror what you're doing as an organization, and to look at every single segment of their business to identify opportunities. In terms of employees at Georgia Power, they can be mentors. There's nothing more valuable than lending your time, talent, or your thought leadership to helping somebody else improve their business. So mentoring is key, being a mentor, being an expert. We've got an expert in residence. You've got a lot of thought leaders out there in the community, and they can be a part of sharing, again, some of their thought leadership and expertise in helping small businesses. I think, and last but clearly not least, is asking corporations. My ask is take the pledge, increase 1% a year. We can get there. We can track that, make that commitment, and we can close this gap. Jay said it, intentional, having an intentional plan to get there. And so we're all in this together. I think that the outcome has such impact on our state, on our nation, and even globally on what we do from this moment forward.
So, audience, there you have it. So what? Inclusive procurement also delivers broader societal benefits by generating economic opportunity for disadvantaged communities. Procurement commitments from government organizations and the private sector can also help level the playing field for minority-owned suppliers by encouraging MBE participation and granting contracts. Access to capital is vital if we want to see continued job creation and revenue generation from our small and diverse businesses. So we thank our panel of small and diverse business advocates and subject matter experts today for sharing the importance of economic empowerment and how we all can participate in the growth of our economy by supporting and developing small and diverse businesses. I'm going to remind our teammates to please connect with our supplier sustainability and inclusive growth team. And also, I want to thank our executive producer, Warren Jones, for keeping us on the go. I am Vicki Irwin Avery, and I am so honored to serve alongside each of you every day as we create generational wealth in the communities we serve by supporting an inclusive supply chain. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, peace and blessings. And now I turn it over to Rosa. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, Vicki. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'd like to say and mention a couple more messages or comments that came through the chat. I think I'd be remiss if I don't share these. Michelle Mohammed said, "This was an awesome dialogue. Thanks to all the panelists and to Vicki for moderating this event." And then Adrienne Tickle shared that great call to action for the team, being intentional with their dollars. Thank you so much for sharing and engaging today during our webinar. So thank you for joining us today for the second social justice webinar. You will receive a survey about the webinar, and we welcome and appreciate your feedback. The next social justice webinar will continue the conversation with community investment. So stay tuned. This will be on Wednesday, October the 20th at the same time, 11:30 to 1 o'clock. So thank you.